Hey peeps, here we go. Starting section 4.2. And we're going to start talking about how experiments work and observational studies work and all the differences in between and the benefits and what, non-benefits of each. I'm going to try something different this section. I'm going to have pre-written everything out so you're not having to watch me write it. We'll still talk through it. Obviously pause it if you needed to write through. I thought that'd probably be a better use of your time and mine. So if there's problems with that, obviously shoot me an email or throw something down in the chat or any of that. So the setup for this is that every year our high school offers an SAT prep course and after school, and students don't have to take it, but many do. And so 44 students took the course and then took the SAT. The average SAT score for that group was 1220. The average SAT score for all students who did not take the prep class was 1050. Now the question is, did the SAT course make any difference? Because after all, that's what the people who are providing the prep course would want to try to promote. And then obviously also, it's one of those things where, one of those things. So first question, is the situation described in an observational study or an experiment? This is what you call an observational study because you're not forcing the students to take the prep class. Okay. For it to be an experiment, you have to have something, which we'll talk about in a second, that you're saying you guys are going to do this and you guys are not. Or you're going to do it to, if you're testing paint, we're going to leave this, we're going to put the paint out in direct sunlight. This paint we're going to leave in a dark room. Okay, so there's something that you are controlling as the researcher. For part 2, explanatory and response variable, the explanatory variable is going to be students who took the course or didn't. And the response variable is going to be the SAT scores. Because again, what's causing the other? And again, like we talked about, that's probably not that far off from things you've done in science or other math classes before. So can you conclude that taking a prep course will cause the student's SAT score to increase? Why or why not? And in this case, you can't. Students who take the course might be highly motivated. They might want to do really well on the SAT, so part of that motivation is taking the course, but they also may just, because of that, really strive to do well. At least here in the state of Illinois, everybody has to take the SAT to graduate. So some people just go in and they just bubble it up, and that's it. So obviously that's going to affect the score of the 1050s. All right. Identify as many other variables that could explain why those SAT scores are higher. Now, again, this is something that normally you just have students run through. So these were some typical things that have come up in the past. Somebody usually says, well, they just want to do well on the ACT. That's why they're taking the course. And so some of them are already high achieving anyway, right? They might not have something to do after school, so they're not involved in not that necessarily that you're doing it just because you want to fill your time, but you might not have a job, they might not have activities or sports and things like that. So those people would be excluded from taking the course. Students in the course are trying to get into college. Yeah, I mean, that's why they're taking the SAT. Well, not why they're taking the SAT here in Illinois, because everybody has to, but that's part of the reason why they want to do well, so they can, as that college scholarships. And they also have to have a ride home from school. Some students don't have a ride home from school. That would preclude them from doing this. So any of those things could be reasons why the scores went up. Okay? So design an experiment to allow. So what you're going to do is this. To do an experiment, this is kind of basic, the format. You're going to randomly choose 100 juniors to be in the experiment. Okay? From there, you're going to go ahead and split it up so that half that 100 students, so 50 of the students would take the SAT course, the other half would not take the SAT course. When the SAT course is done, so that's called, well, actually, I should have been doing this as we go. My apologies. Where'd my other, okay. So this right here, so take the class, this is the treatment. This up here, the 100 juniors, are your experimental units. Who are you doing the treatment on? So that's the treatment there, that's the treatment there. And then after the course is over, all 100 juniors take the SAT. And then at the end, you compare the average scores of the two groups. All right? And that's how you set up an experiment. You have to change something, and you have to be the one choosing it. Remember here, these are used to predict. We talked about that yesterday, or this past week, I think, used to outcomes. Okay? And here, there is no treatment. So when you impose something that's called a treatment. Interesting story here, and I think this was in Freakonomics, but living in Illinois, I also heard about it. Governor Rod Blagojevich, who just recently got out of prison, if I remember correctly, had heard that students or kids between the ages of 0 and 5 years who had lots of books in their house tended to do better in school. So he seriously was going to send 2 books every month to every child under the age of 5 in the state of Illinois. And then somebody pointed out that it's not the books that are making the kids smarter. It's often the family involved. So the families who have lots of books tend to value education, like to read to their students, sometimes maybe have more free time to do it because their parents aren't working 3 jobs, that type of thing. So that's, again, what type of thing that the observational studies can go on. And then those other things would be kind of your confounding variables, like what's coming down here. Things that are causing the increase, in this case, that may or may not be accounted for. All right, so we're going to go through, formalize this a little bit so we can formally talk about what each of these things do, run through an example. That'll be in video 2. See you soon.